Technology Jamaica, who is our patron for this morning, and hopefully our president will also step in as best as he can during the morning. He has another engagement. Let me recognize Miss, in Jamaica we say Mrs. Isabel Vera in the Bermudez, but she reminds me that it is really Vera, and so that is something for us to learn from our neighbor. She's from Cuba. She is the advisor for communication and information from UNESCO, and will be our keynote speaker, so we will see a little bit more later. And then we also recognize our commissioner for the Jamaica, commissioner and CEO for Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, that's Mrs. Maxine Henry Wilson. And to you, our distinguished audience, as I look around, I know that there are representatives from our educational institutions, sister institutions, that's the universities, teachers' colleges, community colleges, and all other related agencies. Welcome. I know we should have in our audience representatives from the embassies, commissions, high commissions, and international development agencies. We will acknowledge. And we want to also recognize those who are here from government ministry and agencies, from our special interest groups. I say the focus of today, or the panel, will be on our disabled communities, and so we want to recognize all the representatives from the communities. Also, in our midst will be private companies, ICT providers, other academic and technology providers. We have honorable retirees among us, who will always remain educators, and to our own internal UTech community, including academic leaders, administrators, the faculty teams, and students who will be here with us. And let me recognize very much so our interpreter for the day, all right? Because this is what the highlight of the day will be about, ensure that we increase accessibility for all. Welcome everyone. It's good to see you, and I know others will be making their way and will join us at various points throughout this proceeding. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to what we call our inaugural symposium on leveraging information communication technology in higher education. It is inaugural because we're seeing this from the Office of Distance Learning at the University of Technology Jamaica as just the first of a series that we will be facilitating, and we would like to have an annual symposium of this kind, and then throughout the academic year we will be having workshops, forums, and projects that seek to implement so that we can go beyond talk. Okay? So welcome, you are part of history, you are part of making this happen. So we're glad to see you. The idea here is to allow us collectively as experts to, yes, this morning have the dialogue on the policy implications of even ICT in higher education, and then the related implementation issues of national, regional importance, and all the socio-economic and political ramifications thereof. Why, how, when we make it all happen. More specifically, today is about increasing our sensitivity to the needs of all stakeholders, including the disabled communities, so that we may redesign higher education opportunities through technology-mediated tools and systems, primarily online blended learning, so that we can facilitate accessibility for all. So with your help today, we want to make a lasting impact, and as I say, move beyond just the talk. As you would see on your draft program, we will have a plenary session, which within minutes, we will introduce our keynote speaker. We'll also hear from our JTech commissioner, who will bring greetings, but also share about vision initiatives and other things that relate to ICT in higher education. Of course, our own Deputy President will give add his welcome and give his opening remarks also. And then we'll have a break. We'll then, well, just before the break, we'll have a panel discussion, as you can see on your program, which we will focus primarily on the accessibility for all. Then we'll have a break and invite you to join us next door for the display, the exhibition, the technology showcase. So quite a tight little morning, but we are hoping that in the dialogue, in the exchange, in the conversation, in your own observations, that we'll get a more realistic picture of what is happening on the ground and what needs to be done. So please ensure that you have a productive and educational day. Please use your evaluation forms to share with us what else we can do. All right? But at this point, I just want us to pause, and with your permission, I want to invite the presence of the Holy Spirit and acknowledge the power of God in our nation, because after all, we do have a national anthem, which is our prayer. So if you will just join me, and let's just pause for the moment, and bring ourselves into this room, and turn to Almighty God. Let's just pause. If you don't mind, and we'll pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for today. This is the day you have made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. We are thankful for all who are gathered here, and we thank the Lord for giving us all the faculties with which we can do your work. So as we gather in this room, you know the matters at hand. And Father, we ask that you give us vision lest we perish. That Heavenly Father, you will guide us in what is true, what is noble, what is of good report. You will give us ideas, but you'll also give us the strategies wherewith to execute. And you'll also give us a sort of temperament that allows us to reflect on what we have done and to learn how best to change, to correct, to improve, but also to press forward. So we just want to acknowledge your presence, and we acknowledge the power of your Holy Spirit in our midst. And we ask for your continued blessing and guidance on all that we do, so that we give it down to the honor and glory of your name, through Christ Jesus. Amen. Thank you. Right, we continue to exchange. So, as I mentioned, other persons will be joining us, and we welcome everyone. As I know, it is a busy, hectic day for many, and so persons have assured me that they'll pop in, pop out, and we will flow with all of that because we are flexible after all. And so at this point, I will invite our Deputy President, Professor Colin Giles, to just say a few words as we proceed. Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to say pleasant good morning to everyone. I'd like to recognize Ms. Vera from UNESCO, Mrs. Maxine Henry, and of course our host, Dr. Jeanette Barkley-Bryan, our Associate Vice President for Open and Distance Learning here at the University of Technology, Jamaica. I'd also like to recognize all the other distinguished members of our audience representing various institutions, higher education, and other institutions. Thank you all for coming, and I also would like to recognize our translator who helps to make what we are saying accessible to the deaf, to the disabled community and others. So thank you all for coming. I would just like to extend greetings on behalf of the University of Technology, Jamaica. I'd like to express regret that our president is not able to be here with us for this opening, and he has asked me to convey remarks on his behalf. To convey to you that the University of Technology, Jamaica is very much interested in this aspect of higher education. As our theme says, leveraging ICT, technology, ICT for higher education. We recognize that the tertiary education landscape is changing. Technology is changing rapidly, and it is changing the way people access education. And accordingly, higher education institutions must make the necessary adjustments to ensure relevance and to ensure that they meet the needs of the stakeholders that they seek to reach. More and more people are seeking higher education through distance modalities. And as higher education is sought from distant places, the most effective way to satisfy those needs is by the use of ICT. And the University of Technology Jamaica has embraced this concept. Accordingly, we have our Office of Distance Learning. And although I must say that we are not the most advanced where technology is concerned, but one thing is certain, is that we recognize the need for ICT, and it is certainly a part of our thrust to ensure that we are able to serve our constituents as best as possible. One of the things that we have done is to spearhead research in increasing accessibility to the disabled. For example, our own Professor Paul Golding and a team of researchers here have done research on making learning more accessible for the deaf community using ICT. And in utilizing those technologies and in underlining our general interest in serving, we have admitted to our student population 3 deaf students who are being facilitated to access higher education. In our own experience, we recognize the need for accessibility. We recognize the need for ensuring that persons with disabilities are able to access education as freely as those of us who are otherwise able. I understand that it is more appropriate to say differently able rather than disabled in relation to persons from the deaf community and others who have disabilities. I just want to close my remarks by saying higher education empowers the population in our country, and it also enables our people to integrate internationally. And one of the best ways to facilitate that is for us to be not just conversant, but able to use effectively technology for learning. We will not learn everything here in the limited space that we have, but through ICT, we can access knowledge far and wide, and we can make it available not only to those who are here, but to people who are further afield. And so I hope that this symposium will provide an opportunity for stakeholders, all of us here, to interact to share our ideas and to provide a better, cohesive and collaborative environment that will enable ICT to be more accessible to all, so that in our designs of curriculum and other facilities, we are able to serve the needs of those that we seek to facilitate. So, ladies and gentlemen, I wish you all the very best for the rest of the symposium, that it will be a pleasant and rewarding experience for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy President. And with that, means we have the blessings of the UTech leadership. Okay, I will now invite Mrs. Maxine Henry Wilson, our JTech Commissioner, to bring greetings. Let me just say a little bit about Mrs. Maxine. She says she doesn't, we don't need to, but just in case, right? She is currently then the Commissioner and Chief Executive Officer of the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission. She assumed this role in February 2012. And her primary task is to establish this organization and to have it operational with the capacity to carry out the mandate of developing, regulating, and supervising institutions within the tertiary sector. So the objective is to engender a culture of quality within the sector through well-articulated, globally competitive institutions. And I'm pausing to just highlight, because there are times, you know, we need to be reminded of what JTech is all about and then all the other institutions. Mrs. Henry Wilson has also held several portfolios in previous government administrations, including that of Minister of Education, Youth and Culture between 2002 and 2007. And in that capacity, one of her landmark achievements was the preparation of a blueprint for the transformation of the education system, which was contained in a report titled Task Force on Educational Reform in Jamaica, a Transformed Education System, 2004. And this continues to be an essential guide for the reforms which are now taking place in the system. So we are glad to have Mrs. Henry Wilson. It means not only will she speak and share from a conceptual position, but she has been there, right in the policy area to direct the country, and so I'm sure she'll share that experience. And she's also an educator. She serves as an adjunct faculty at UE, at the Mico University College and Church Teachers College, teaching public policy and public sector management in specific areas of discipline. She's also a graduate of St. Andrew High School for Girls. She holds a Bachelor of Arts and a Master's in Public Administration from University of the West Indies, and also a Master's in Public Policy from Rutgers, State University of New Jersey. She's married with a daughter. But I just had to introduce, because sometimes, you know, we go along in education and we persons over and over, and we sometimes need to just be reminded of the wealth of experience that they bring. Thank you, Mrs. Henry Wilson. Looking forward to hearing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Professor Gans, Deputy Principal, our keynote speaker, Mrs. Vera, and to all the invitees who are here, good morning. And I'm sure the introduction is going to be longer than my presentation. However, thanks very much. Like everyone else, I'd like to commend Dr. Bartley and her team and her faculty for putting on what is a very important seminar, symposium at this particular juncture. In interfacing with members of the tertiary community, the higher education community, one of the things I perceive is that they have a genuine anxiety about transforming the tertiary education sector. And this is driven by a number of factors. One is, and I'm sure as scholars here you probably know more about it than I do, is what has now become known as the advent of the fourth industrial revolution. And this is something that has come out of lots of discussions with the World Economic Forum. And the notion is that we have been through several epochal changes, and that where we are now is beyond where the information technology is, because we're talking about Internet of Things and all the other kinds of technologies that are going to make a decisive impact on how we live, how we earn, and how we learn. And the tertiary community recognizes the challenge that that poses to them. Why? Because some of the characteristics of this period, which is called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, is that the majority of jobs and professions, as we now know them, will perhaps become obsolete in a couple of years. Robotics will be an important supplement to or complement of our labor, or human labor. It will replace it in some instances, and it will transform it in many instances. That countries such as Jamaica, which do not now take the opportunity to insert themselves, not at the bottom of technology, but to leapfrog in technology, going to find that they are not only left behind, but it's going to be difficult for them to catch up in terms of modernizing their society, not just their economy, their society, how we live, how we learn, and how we earn. And that all this means that there has to be a transformative change in both how we deliver and the content of education. So in this borderless world, it's not an option. It is a requirement that we transform ourselves and how we teach, how we learn, and how we prepare for the 21st century. At issue also is the survival of the very higher education institutions themselves, because there have been transformations in the environment in which they are operating. For example, there's a change in the profile of the users of this system. It's more feminized, there are more women who are entering the sector, many of them are more mature, that is, they have families, there are questions of distance, but there is an imperative that they need to recruit. There is diversity in content and delivery of programs. We have here the differently abled community and all the requirements of assistive technology, that they have to be mainstreamed in the activities of education. And then we have the requirement, sine qua non, of what is called digital literacy. Everyone, from a child right up, and I think the children are more equipped than we are, because they don't have any phobia, and that's their world, that's how they were born. But digital literacy and emotional literacy are two of the primary requirements of higher education. And the content and the organization of higher education programs, the competition, the choice of offerings, all of these are not things that we need to debate about, but things that we need to get done. So that the Commonwealth of Learning has identified 4 trends in higher education. And these are the criteria by which I suggest you need to assess sustainability. Increase in blended learning, integrating life skills into higher education, rapid rise in micro-credentials, what is referred to as stackable credentials in some instances, because you can even now customize your own degree, a mini degree, as distinct from a long drawn-out process, and you get an interim kind of qualification. And of course, growth in the potential of mobile technology. We're talking about, many of the schools now are talking about bring your own devices, rather than us now looking at large computers or even tablets. Your smartphone is a device that many schools are now doing. So all of this means transformation in curriculum development, it means transformation in assessment methods, and all the supports for teaching and learning. Unfortunately, in some instances, in many instances, and I think we can apply that to Jamaica, the promise of technology has not always enhanced performance. And that is because we tend to see technology as an add-on, as distinct as a part of our learning culture and our social interaction. So that over the last 7 years, or more, from 2003, the Ministry of Education has had what is called an EduVision conference. And last conference, we decided that what we needed to do was to evaluate where we are in terms of higher education, teaching and learning, and the use of technology. And the conclusions to which we arrived were: 1, that there is a lack of sustained and meaningful use of ICT tools and resources supplied to schools in teaching and learning. And commonly this is attributed to things like teacher technophobia and resistance to change. And secondly, the identification of a complex of variables that impact why, where, and how current approaches to applying ICT to teaching are succeeding or failing. Unfortunately also, where we have had visionary interventions, such as the Jamaica Research Education Network, which is a platform on which we could ensure that our tertiary institutions are inserted and integrated in some of the most advanced research and education networks, that has been unfortunately decommissioned. No longer is there that CARIBNet platform which we're hoping to integrate not just with our regional colleagues, but also with beyond that into the rest of the world. And what that speaks to is that we stop and we start and we keep being left behind. Inconsistency of policy. The Ministry of Education has articulated a clear policy around ICT in education, and the objective of that policy is to employ ICT as a key to improve educational outcomes at all levels of the system. The question is its implementation. And in that regard, I'd like to thank, and I have to be careful now I say this because I see the colleagues behind here who own this program. I'd like to thank UNESCO, working with the Ministry of Education, for the advanced implementation, I'm going to say implementation because of the ICT competency framework for teachers. A competency framework for teachers. And that competency framework is to utilize ICT for 6 modules: understanding ICT in education, curriculum and assessment, pedagogy, information and communication technologies, organization and administration of ICT, and teacher professional development. Now these are to be inserted into the curriculum of the teachers' colleges. And we have been working, and I see my colleague, Mrs. Dr. Plunkett here, we have been facilitating much of the work of that project. And but the good news is, and this is good news facilitated by UTech, is that UTech has decided that effective next September, they will pilot the project. You're looking, Mr. Garris, you're not looking as if... And we thank you for being the pioneers. We look forward to the outcomes. We will be monitoring it very, very, very rigorously and definitively, because we believe this is important in answering some of the questions and meeting some of the issues that have been raised in terms of our failure to advance as quickly as we would like in terms of technology and education. Your input here today, of course, will be an important part of this program, because we will then feed it back into some of the aspects of the curriculum. But we have to move beyond that. We have to now have players in the system who are committed to making this a reality. So thank you for your contribution towards this, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. And just to pick up on your point, Mrs. Henry Wilson mentioned about the promise. Sometimes, in terms of our observations from the time we're talking about ICT here in Jamaica, we get frustrated because we want to press the button and just see the thing happen, immediately. And we're now using our mobile phones so much and talking with each other, and so the expectations of response and sending a message, sending an email, and why doesn't this person respond? And we here at UTech realize that it is broader than just the institution. It requires a whole national thrust just to get the infrastructure up. And I see persons shaking their heads. So I know, beyond what an individual institution may be doing, not to mention the commercial rates that we're paying, just to access internet, that it takes a lot more to get done. And we want to have some of those ideas and conversations even throughout the proceedings today. And I pause here just to say, technology then is more than just the equipment, more than just the hardware, more than just the software. I offer you that technology is about thought, it's about technique. Yes, it's about the tools, and I have the mobile phone in my hand. But the human factor is very important. It's the human factor that has to make it work. It's like robotics, right? Yes. And the technology is about process, product. Yes. It's about place. It's even about persons. So in all of that, the framework has to be set and everything has to come together to make it work. And so we may be distributing equipment and we may be doing a lot of things and we are saying, what's happening? Why is it not working? I don't know if you remember the days of the dish. Yes. The schools got dishes and things like that. What's happening? Today we may exchange it for tablets or we may exchange it for other type of equipment that we distribute. And so this is part of the proceedings for today, for us to stop. And as Mrs. Maxine says, to stop and evaluate. And to say, how are we doing it? And when we look at the best practices elsewhere, how is that happening? And what will it take to make it happen? And so I just pause to highlight that that's what the conversation is about today. So there's a lot more that you bring to help us at the table, because as you share what is also happening in your particular experience, then collectively we can look at what works and we can say, how do we learn from what doesn't work, right? Because sometimes as a country we beat up ourselves, right, with a failure. But I prefer to call it the opportunity to learn from what doesn't work. Okay, with that said, I want to acknowledge our keynote speaker for the morning, Miss Vera. Okay. And as I mentioned before, she is the advisor for communication information at UNESCO. I just shared that she has worked for UNESCO since 1999. She has been in charge of designing and implementing the communication information program in the Caribbean, so the Caribbean countries. She is experienced in managing UNESCO projects on promoting freedom of expression, media development, and knowledge society. And her projects have included the use of ICT for social development, fostering communication at the community level, for development at the community level, and media and information literacy, and also the ICT in education policy and the ICT competency framework for teachers, among other things. She has a master's degree in communication science and a bachelor in cybernetics. But of interest to us today is that experience from the Caribbean, it's the experience from the global connection through UNESCO, and above all, from what she's been doing in terms of just helping us to make it all work. So without further ado, let me invite Ms. Vera. You prefer to?
Thank you. Before I start, I would like to say Jamaican good morning. Good morning! Good morning. I'm very honored to be joining you in this symposium hosted by UTech as UNESCO representative. As you might know, my organization gives great importance to the things that we are that gathers us here today. I would like to thank Ms. Henry Wilson for her remarkable words, which are very much in line with UNESCO views on these things, as you will also notice from my speech. So, Professor Colin Giles, Deputy President of UTech Jamaica, Ms. Maxine Henry Wilson, CEO of the Jamaican Tertiary Education Commission, Dr. Janet Farley Bryan, Associated Vice President of the Office of Distance Learning in UTech, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, guests. If you allow me, I will sit down because I have a problem on my knee that I cannot be standing for long. So, earlier this year, and at the request of the CEO of the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, Her Excellency Ms. Maxine Herbie Wilson, here present, a UNESCO team conducted an assessment of the major strengths and weaknesses of the Jamaican tertiary education system. The report, stemming from this assessment, revealed clearly, besides legislative and institutional governance challenges, a number of structural challenges that threatens the viability of the tertiary education subsector as a whole if some of the past trends persist, particularly instability of funding pattern, lack of more flexible but predictable learning pathways, limiting seamless portability and transferability of credits earned by students across the system, limited diversification and relevance of programs, not matching with the dynamic of a rapidly evolving skills demand on the job market, declining trends on enrollments, specifically in fields such as science, technology, innovation, and broadly in technical and vocational streams. In 2015, the United Nations identified 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, which will be guiding global and national development agenda up to 2030. These goals made consistent reference to the need to harness the potential of information and communication technologies, namely SDG 4, which is on education, 5 on gender, 9 on industry, innovation and infrastructure, 16 on peaceful and inclusive societies, and 17 on partnerships. It is like stating the obvious to preach to the great audience here that higher education institutions, being the pioneers of research and innovation that led to the birth and the rapid expansion of the current information age revolution, have and need to take meaningful advantage of the extraordinary promises of technology for its own survival. Needless to emphasize that in the particular context of the Caribbean and the small island developing states in general, where many are facing problems of smallness, isolation, and scattered populations, leveraging effectively the potential of ICTs becomes a rather opportune development imperative. As a caveat, however, UTech or any other tertiary education institutions willing to embark on this journey could approach such dynamic and in a rather regional framework. This is simply because of the benefits of scale economy and the inherent opportunities of a regional approach to help mutualize the small resources within the reach of each individual tertiary education institution and the Caribbean islands and territories as a whole. In that, I would urge universities in the region to take proactive and concerted initiatives to contribute their part in the revitalization of the CARICOM single ICT space concept, launched some years ago in the region. The question of integrating technology or not in higher education is no longer to be debated, but doing it right has always remained the dilemma for decision makers at the highest level of university chancelleries and management boards. Often, the meaning given to having it right for the pure proponents of education technologies is rarely the same for universities' decision-making bodies, who would always seek evidences that there would be a critical incremental value added compared to the traditional face-to-face delivery mode before venturing into the journey. Luckily, there are more and more growing body of evidences that point to the fact that technology-enabled learning in higher education institutions is not only any longer possible to avoid in the current digital age revolution, but more importantly, it continues to demonstrate significant advances with radical impacts in several areas of teaching and learning, of creativity, of research and innovation. However, the wisdom across the literature equally reveals to us that the adoption of educational technologies has a cost, yet a cost that is gradually decreasing in markets where competition is vibrant. This cost includes, in addition to devices, networks, software, the most often neglected cost associated with bringing lecturers' capacities up to speed and the recurring cost of continued upgrades. And I will also add the sometimes difficult mind change. Also, there is no question that there isn't any room for us in the Caribbean region to refrain from embarking in the journey, trying to do it right, cost-effectively, and wisely must always haunt us as we move forward, given that our region is no main producer of those technologies that are unavailable enablers. But then, how are the information and communication technologies shaping higher education in today's world? Building on the NMC Horizon Report series, which accumulates more than 15 years of research dedicated to the issue of emerging technology trends and its impact on teaching, learning, and creative thinking in higher education, one could summarize the right mix of success factors underpinning some of the proven promising practices or approach to ICT's integration in higher education as follows. 1. Readiness of leadership to nurture and infuse mindset and cultural transformation matters a great deal. This must be envisioned and implemented through promoting exchange of fresh ideas, creating enabling environment to help identify successful models within and outside of campuses, and rewarding technology-enabled pedagogies and modernization in teaching methods while having learners' success and their preparedness for a versatile job marketplace at the center of every innovation at all times. 2. Focus needs to be on servicing skills for the real world in order to bolster gainful employment for students and on engaging in the provision of continued professional development training packages and on-the-job services for those already in the workplace. 3. Communities of practice. Collaboration across multidisciplinary groups of leaders and champions in order to learn from each other is definitely instrumental for harnessing and scaling cost-effective and promising solutions. Collaboration and sharing of practices as part of a community of tertiary education institutions has the undeniable advantage of limiting transaction costs associated with the usual temptation of doing things alone or in an uncoordinated manner. 4. Internet bandwidth matters. Efforts to bridge the access gap to broadband internet and relevant ICT infrastructures, for instance, like fiber optic networks, in order to take full advantage of the proliferation of free open source online learning materials or learning materials under open educational resources licenses is crucial for economies in the southern hemisphere like the Caribbean. Here, it should be noted that ITU UNESCO-led Broadband Commission is spearheading advocacy globally with major private sector icons, high-level policymakers, and renowned social activists in favor of bridging the existing digital gap. Countries in the Caribbean will do their part by creating strong regional bargaining forces to seize opportunities available or coming sooner or later to their shores. 5. University knowledge acquisition and skills assessment methods need to be completely revolutionized and supported by adaptive technologies, allowing to focus on measuring students' personalized learning experience and also tracking learners' acquisition in specific sets of practical skills, such as technical vocational skills and competencies, creativity, critical thinking abilities, global citizenship, as well as locally relevant work ethic and social values. 6. Generalizing campus-wide advanced digital literacy and promoting overall technology-savvy environments seems catalytic for any smooth integration of ICT-enabled learning in higher education. 7. Blended learning approach that combines a re-engineered face-to-face teaching practice with online, mobile, or various forms of technology-enabled learning modality is simply an ultimate condition for success of ICT's integration in higher education. 8. Agility of the learning ecosystem must be in place to enable smart adaptation of new contents as well as teaching and learning methods to a constantly changing landscape in support to newly emergency skills demands. 9. Higher education must remain an incubator for research and innovation, always ambitioning to take a step in deepening the capabilities of technology to service of themselves, of the economy, and the society. 10. Higher education institutions must remain the bedrock of lifelong learning, not focusing alone on formal accredited programs, but also on an array of flexible a la carte informal learning programs as the only way to maintain sustainable levels of demand for their services. In conclusion, in today's globalizing economy, without creating the conditions for flexible programs, actionable research, and innovation services for which there is a demand or a natural market every day and all year long, the sources of a sustainable funding for tertiary education institutions are likely to become more and more scarce, hence jeopardizing their survival. But technologies offer glimmers of hope if deliberately but wisely embraced. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bear. A lot to chew on. I know some of us have been to several conferences and in our own sphere we have been speaking about the matter. But thank you very much, Ms. Vera, because you have in various ways provided the criteria for assessment, or reflection, and also pointed the way. One thing I heard is that as tertiary education institutions, as higher education institutions, we do have to work harder to take advantage of the vision of the single Caribbean space, ICT space. And so we have to continue to lobby our Caribbean governments to ensure that it's more practical and that we do have the strategies for implementation. With your permission, and sometimes it's not, they don't need to really allow questions after a keynote speaker. But I was just feeling that if one or two persons wanted to either comment or have a question, that I can allow it. So with your permission, because I hate this sort of one-way flow, and still be mindful of time because we will go into a panel discussion. But I will allow from the floor, from the audience here, if anybody has any comments about anything that has been said so far, because we may appreciate that we have covered from the localized UTech. Our Deputy President did share a little bit about what's happening here. We have gone into the national space in terms of Mrs. Maxine Henry Wilson. sharing from the broader UTech. And then we have Ms. Vera who carried us also a little wide into the Caribbean, still mindful of what we need to do here in Jamaica. So if there's any one person who wants a comment or so, then I will allow it at this point. Yes. Then you recognize Dr. Paul Ivey, professor here, associate professor here, with responsibility for graduate studies, research, and entrepreneurship.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. Ms. Vera, you mentioned the CARICOM single ICT space as a possibility to be advanced, and also in terms of the listing of things that you enumerated, you made mention of successful models. So I have two questions. Are there any UNESCO initiatives to advance the single Caribbean ICT space? And secondly, are there any particular successful models that you could identify to share with us?
Thank you for
I've been asked to do a do-over. You alluded to the single Caribbean ICT space. And I was asking if UNESCO has any particular initiatives to advance that objective or goal. And secondly, regarding successful models of leveraging ICT in higher education institutions, if there are any that you could identify to just mention. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, the UNESCO office, which is based here in Kingston, has a regional scope for UNESCO covering all the English and Dutch-speaking Caribbean. In this context, the office has a special memorandum of understanding with CARICOM, which is the main framework for us to work for promoting the ICT single space. In particular, from next year, so very, very close now, we are implementing the special, what we are calling the Special Initiative for the Caribbean, which is a program that will focus mainly on promoting youth initiatives that empower young people in the Caribbean for participating more in the society and in the decision-making processes, and also on climate change. This special initiative has a component specifically for education program, and in particular for using more ICTs in education. So what we will try to do is to accompany Caribbean states governments in implementing or updating their education, ICTs for education policies. That's the work that we will be doing, that is in the framework also of the CARICOM ICT single space. So about our model, I'm not sure that we have one that I can mention at this moment. So, but if you have another meeting like this next year, probably like Jamaica precisely.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Vera. So that's a challenge for us then, that in our space here, we may not have a model we can put our fingers on where the Caribbean is concerned. So it means that we have work to do. Okay. Is there any second? Okay. Here's the mic.
Good morning, everyone. Henry Gray from Heart Trust. This question is directed to Mrs. Henry Wilson. It has to do with national policy ICT. Is there one, and does it include special needs, and is it available across the view?
Yes, there is a national ICT education policy. It has been long in coming, many years being developed, because at each juncture, the longer you wait, the more changes there will be, right? But there is such a policy, and I think our colleagues here will say that is it not a stage where other persons can access it? Yes. Yes, you can access it through the Ministry of Education. I think it may be on your site as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We will have opportunities throughout. And so as you think through, we want to hear from you. All right. So thank you. At this point, I will ask that our special guests, or Deputy President, or keynote speaker, and the Commissioner, will invite them to join us at the front row. And what we will then do is get ready for panel discussion. So please, everybody, do not leave, all right? Because all we're doing is changing over now. We're mindful of time, and we're mindful of your own hectic schedules. And so I just have a 5-minute pause just to allow us to step down and to have the panelists who have been here, who are waiting to set up, and I will hand over to Mrs. Floyd Williams, who will be the moderator for that panel. Okay, if you have any further questions, just make a note of them, and throughout the day we will accommodate and respond, because that's the purpose for us here to exchange. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, thank you for coming to this our session. And we have a wonderful panel sitting here. I'd invite you to just look at their profiles in your program. We have our own Professor Paul Golin, and he is from the College of Business and Management here. We have Mr. Soboda. He is from the USA, but he works here as an interpreter for 2 of our students, and you can read other things about him. We have Mrs. Brathwaite. She is from the Jamaican Society for the Blind, and you can also read more about her. She's very enthused. Well, they're all very enthused about what we do here. And we have Miss Amakeda Wine. She's a student. So we want to thank them all for being here. So I just want to take the opportunity now to express what we're really about in this panel discussion. It talks about accessibility for all, and we're designing for the online, because I heard a lot of blended teaching mentioned here since we started, and in the Office of Distance Learning, we're really all about online learning. The one objective is really, of this panel discussion today, is really to determine if there exists a case for accessibility in higher education, especially regarding the online course design. Okay, so we're really looking at seeing if we can build much more of a case, because we believe in it. We believe in accessibility for everyone. So what is accessibility? It means that persons with upper body impairments, whether those persons are blind or those with visual impairment, or whatever cognitive learning disability, hearing impairment, they have all full access to course content that's online. So there should be nothing that blocks such a person from learning just like any other person. So I heard the term today, differentiated ability or something. I'm not really used to that, but for now, we can always talk about what is a disability. A physical or mental condition that limits a person's movement, senses, or activity. Of course, we also might want to say something that might be a handicap. And sometimes it's recognized by law, but we rarely go by those. Somebody might be legally blind, things like those recognized by law. So we want to sort of explore today the importance of accessibility, right? And we're looking at it from the context of equality. So whatever the issues are, we want to know that our students are able to access content that's there. Without accessibility, there can be no equality. So as a university, we can't go any further until we completely embrace the whole idea of accessibility. I know that there are some persons who might be retired, you know, you're getting up in age, and with that comes some sight problems, with that comes some hearing loss or so. It can be argued. Some people say, okay, that's not a disability, that's just regular aging. Others are willing to embrace that. Whatever student or whoever you are who wants to access the online, we want to know that you can get online freely and you can learn everything. One of the focus we want to do, have here is that all of our faculty members, all persons who have something to offer in terms of content, would embrace the whole idea of designing with accessibility in mind. So I'm sure going forward you'll hear more about how we will design with accessibility in mind. So I'll just push it on to mention universal inclusive design, or you might just hear universal design. So these now engage the tools that are known as assistive technologies, and they can range from screen reader, touch screen, pointers, head pointers, and we have inclusive design, which really emphasizes participation and recognizes that all students have varied abilities and needs. So there are many different assistive technologies that are used. And the truth about it is that whether or not we have a disability, we are happy for a touch screen, true? Whether or not we have any sort of visual impairment, we are happy to have bigger fonts and just to use. So these can be used by anyone and everyone. So how do we embrace the UID approach, Universal Inclusive Design approach? We have to make teaching methods accessible to all students. So whatever we put online, whatever you do in the classroom should be accessible to every student. We want to consider a wide range of abilities, including interest and learning styles and experiences. And when we have content, also those don't give the print, we can use audio, we should have the voice with that also. And there are many things, make visual aids large, right? For example, use large fonts. So we have, for the visual impaired persons, individuals with severe impairments, visual impairment may rely on a screen reader. There are several of them there, screen readers. So we are saying also that when we design, as one quick example is that if we put an image online, we are asking those persons who are like our facilitators, they put in an image online, or say for those of us who are course creators, we are also going to put the description for the image so that the reader will read what is being asked, what is being displayed. So there's even braille phones, quite a number of innovative ideas. Low vision, so we have the zoom feature on different platforms, the zoom, that is also good, but especially with the PNG formats. We have some types of hearing technologies for the deaf or hard of hearing persons, alerting devices, whatever they are. We'll hear more today. Sign language. One of our dreams is to make sure that sign language becomes a part of what we offer online. So I'm looking out for software that can interpret text. I don't know. Or some way online so the student is just able. So we have all of those as visions. So then, radio buttons, drop-down menus, highlighting comments and giving a tab. I mentioned already giving tags to images, writing the description there. Being careful how the colors are used online. So what is contrasted? We wouldn't put a red on a green background. And colors like those, we are careful to see what we do. So then, we have to make sure that we provide options. You know, it's not just going to be one straight way of offering content. We're going to make sure that we are able to offer options. And if there's something that can magnify sound if necessary, something that can make pronunciations clearer, clarify vocab and symbols, all of those would be good for online. So all the references that I had are there in case anybody needs that. So basically, I'm just gonna invite our panelists. And I'll begin with Professor Paul Golin. I'm going to invite him to just give his opening remarks because he's very instrumental, as you see, in this sort of an accessibility topic, the whole idea. Yes, Professor. You may speak.
Colleagues and guests, good morning. I am proud to be sharing this panel with Amake Mwale, who is deaf, Kamika Brathwaite, who is blind, and Andy, who does sign. I'm really happy for this, and I feel proud that we are doing something like this in which we are looking at being inclusive, in which somebody who's blind, somebody who's deaf is on a panel discussing inclusion in education here at UTech, and that we're having this discussion in Jamaica. We tend to ignore persons with disabilities. We marginalize them, and we just don't take them into consideration when most things is going on. It's, well, you can't hear, so they don't count almost. And for a country that is developing, we have to go beyond that. We have to be far more inclusive. When you take into consideration the fact that the population that I work with most, the deaf population, you have upwards of 80% of persons there being unemployed, very little access to higher education. It is something that, as a people, we cannot accept, and that we must do something about it. And because it's not a huge population, we tend to figure that, well, okay, it really doesn't matter. And if we marginalize any group of persons, we're doing a disservice to everybody. And that's the way I feel. We at UTech have we have matriculated 2 deaf persons, 2 profoundly deaf persons who are here today. And what we want to do as a university is to be far more inclusive. We have 2 deaf schools right behind us on campus here. And we have taken the position that we are going to lead in terms of being more inclusive. We are in the process now of learning how to really incorporate deaf students into our population, into our curriculum, and adjusting along the way. We're learning along the way because we do not know enough about the deaf population, so we're kind of making it up, and we're looking to see what the best practices are elsewhere. A huge problem that we have has to do with resources. A deaf person needs an interpreter. A blind person who I've taught before, I've taught blind persons before, tend to be a little bit less dependent on somebody else being there to translate. I remember in teaching my deaf class, teaching a class with a deaf person, she would constantly remind me when I did something in which I demonstrated, she would constantly remind me, sir, and she'd raise her hand and say, remember, I'm sitting right here in front of you. After a couple of classes, I got used to it. I knew that, well, listen, I needed to take her into consideration. When it comes to the deaf person, it becomes far more prohibitive because you need to have an interpreter. When we started this whole process of recruiting deaf students, we didn't know how exactly we're going to do it, because one of the problems that we had is that we didn't have an interpreter. And we didn't have any funds for an interpreter. And this taught me that you don't need to know everything before you start. You need to start something, all right? Because the day before was the day that we were going to start, and Amakeda was going to start classes. Andy came up to us, out of the blue, to say, listen, he'll interpret for us. He was a godsend, but when we started, honestly, that part of it we had not yet worked out. And I don't want to put religion into this because I know how some people feel about it. But it was a godsend, all right? We are also doing some other things in which we are developing software. We have developed a software to help deaf students to learn prepositions. And we want to expand it beyond that. We want to develop far more content for deaf persons. I want to say the final thing here because I need to have the rest of the panel speak. I recently, about 2 weeks ago, attended the World Federation for the Deaf Conference, and 98%, if not more, of the persons there were profoundly deaf. It's the most unusual conference I've ever been to because I was a minority. I was, if you want to call it, deaf, because everybody else could communicate with each other, and I could not effectively communicate with most of the people, but you can still communicate without spoken language, and that I had to do in order to get around. I am, and the university is fully committed towards integrating persons with disability on this campus. My BAS is just towards the deaf population, but it is not exclusive. But my concentration has been towards the deaf population. I just want to mention one other thing here, one last thing here. There's a colleague of mine who I want to make mention of because she was the one who introduced us to the deaf population. The deaf population was around behind UTech for years, and is another staff member who was introduced to them, that introduced us to the deaf population. Other than that, we just saw the sign saying, Lister Bear Gilby School for the Deaf, and Danny Williams School for the Deaf, and it just meant nothing. We just knew that it was there. So my colleague there, Lisa Faces Shaw, who is going to look as if she doesn't want anybody to notice her, is the one who introduced us to this. And as a result of that, this is where we are now, and we are pushing on because we are going to make a difference for persons with disability, not just deaf persons, but anybody with disability. Our approach to them must change. It cannot be the way it was before, in which we just call in somebody dummy because they're deaf. All have names, should be called by their names, should be respected, and as a culture, a subculture within the Jamaican population ought to be respected. God bless.
Thank you. So I'm asking Mrs. Brathwaite from the Jamaican Society for the Blind to share with us.
Good morning, everyone, panelists and guests. Let me just express on behalf of the blind and visually impaired community my appreciation for UTech for having this discussion, because as was mentioned before, sometimes persons with disabilities seem to be forgotten, right? And in terms of online learning, sometimes the websites are so inaccessible. It's like it wasn't designed with the fact that visually impaired persons should be included, should be students, right? So in terms of the tips, Mrs. Williams touched on some, in terms of how the website should be set up for it to be accessible to the blind and visually impaired. I want to add that she said we use screen readers, whether it's from the computer or on the phone. That's how a blind person would be able to use the computer. The screen reader is a software that you install, and it basically interprets what's on the screen. So a sighted person will be able to read or see what's on the screen. The screen reader tries to interpret that to us in terms of speech, so we can understand what's there. we tried to ask persons to set up their website with headings. Headings help a blind person to understand the structure, the hierarchical structure of the web page, and you get to information quicker as well, right? So a sighted person can look, say you want to find grades, and you know grades is on the administration section. Instead of having to arrow down through everything, I would be able to jump by age, which is jumping by headings, straight to the administrative section and find grades. So you find information quicker. We also would understand because it would say heading level 1 or heading level 2. So we would know a big heading as opposed to a subheading. We would understand the structure of the page, right? And Mrs. Williams touched on the fact that images are not accessible. They have to be accompanied with text descriptions for us to know what this image is depicting. As well as videos. I have done an online course, and you have videos, and I'm sure all of us have one on YouTube. You have videos that just showing words and they're showing things, and there is no audio. That means nothing to a blind person. There must be some level of audio to tell us what's going on, right? There's also the documents. I want to make mention, this must be said, documents. So if for online learning, sometimes you have information there for the students to download. If it's a Microsoft Office Word document, generally that's accessible, very accessible. Microsoft Word is fine. PDF can be a little touchy. Yes, PDF documents. If you create a Microsoft Word document and then turn that into PDF, then that's accessible. However, if you print a document and then you then proceed to scan it and put it and save it as a PDF for us to download, the screen reader will recognize it as an image and it will not read it. It's just going to say image graphic, so it says nothing. So we recommend that for a document like that, if you do have to scan and put in, because you know, we prefer you do the document directly in Word or something like that. But if you do have a case like that, OCR, optical character recognition, would have to be done on that document first before posting it or saving it as a PDF. When that is done, then the screen reader will recognize it as text and it will then read it. Yeah, PowerPoint as well is the same thing. Be careful of scanning documents and sending it as a PowerPoint, you know, into the PowerPoint. If it's created in PowerPoint, it's fine, but just be careful of the scanning. There's also, if sometimes maybe, I know we're talking about online, but sometimes we have distance learning where students come in and you may give printed material. Just remember, try to give a blind person the material electronically, you know, so give us, email it, or on a jump drive, just give them electronically so the screen reader can read for them. Although we have apps now on the phones that can see, that can pick up the print, but that's more onerous to do. It's better you just give the person electronically. Or there are low vision persons like myself that use large print. I don't like the large print though, but there are some persons who use a large print. It strains my eyes, but there are others who use it. So some persons can use larger print, then that would help them as well. So all of those in general would help. Oh, zooming technology. She mentioned zooming technology, and she also mentioned the contrast. Yes, please do not have cluttered websites. The cluttering, if somebody's gonna zoom, it makes it so difficult for somebody to be trying to view the page, right? Make it less cluttered and try to make the website layout constant, so it's not all over the place. And in general, the presenters, the course instructors, please just remember, if you do have a blind or visually impaired person in the class, please remember that that person, you know, Professor Golden just said that the deaf person kept nudging him. Just remember that the person is there, because as Mrs. Williams was also in her presentation and she would read whatever is on the screen, then proceed to expand, you would have to do that because the blind person wouldn't be able to see what's on the presentation, right? So thank you very much for the blind and visually impaired having a voice here.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mrs. Bradley. So it's now Ms. Wallen's turn to share with us. Just a few words.
I don't really have any general comments. No, I would actually prefer to Andy if he could cover the general comments.
Okay. Mr. Swoboda.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm particularly excited about what Office of Distance Learning is doing because I believe that it is not only going to forward advance distance learning, it will advance the university experience also, because the things that you've shown me thus far and the potential that I'm picturing in my head can really help us in the classroom as well. So I'll start out with that general statement there. But so in terms of deafness, and I'm going to try to carefully generalize the deaf situation. Obviously, I am not deaf, so if I say something dumb, I am very sure Amakeda will correct me, possibly with a jab to the ribs. So in general, I want to point out that deafness is a very much alters a person's cultural experience. So if a person is deaf, especially from birth, they are largely a different culture than the culture they were born into. So they look Jamaican, but they are deaf Jamaican, and that means a lot. Language or culture is centered around language. I mean, that's just, if you're German and you're living in Jamaica, you're probably going to seek out other German-speaking people because there is a cultural sense there. There's a cultural connection. It is very similar with deaf people. So if we understand that deafness is also a cultural issue, it helps us realize how to move forward with inclusion. And so, for example, Jamaican Sign Language, and I'm certain that most people don't understand this, but Jamaican Sign Language is not just a copy of English. When I am interpreting in the classroom, I am listening to what is being said, and I am converting it into largely a much different language, and definitely a different mode of understanding. English is very linear, for instance. We create sentences which have a linear direction. They are linear. The deaf mind does not think linearly. It thinks, this is happening, well, we established this, we established this, we established this, now what are all these people doing? So it is completely different. It is spatial, okay, so you can imagine how that makes communication interesting. As an interpreter, what I am doing in the classroom is my job is to facilitate the integration of the student into the classroom. So that means, and Tarji also does this with me, that means whatever is happening in the room, we're interpreting, because otherwise you can't really be involved. If somebody tells a joke in the corner and everybody's laughing, if we're not interpreting what just happened, that deaf person is not involved. And learning, honestly, stops at that point. So, all right, I'm going to try to be general and short. My skill is not to be brief. Dr. Golding just chuckled because he's been the recipient of my non-briefness before. With regards to the technology, the ODL technology, the foundation you have, I think, is wonderful. It is very visual. Okay, the very beginning of deaf inclusion with ODL would be closed captioning. So at the bottom, we are streaming the words that are being spoken by the professor. That's just a start. And the reason I say that's just a start is because English, for most deaf people, English is a second language. It is not their L1. If there's any FELS people here, it is not their L1, it is their L2. So, so we need to be careful that we don't depend too much on the written English. So maybe an interpreter, like you see when Parliament is televised, you see Antoinette down there interpreting, saying everything that's happening. That's an option. But there are other visual things that you could definitely do to help facilitate understanding. So, and there's many things we can talk about there. I have all sorts of opinions, trust me. So, so I think I've kind of generalized the situation. Oh, deafness in Jamaica, by the way, there are about, from what we can tell, and census information is sketchy, there are about 40,000 people who have reduced hearing levels, all right? I say that purposefully, 40,000. Culturally deaf people, as I described before, there are still around 10,000 culturally deaf people in Jamaica. So it's not a small group. And as far as the university is concerned, it is indeed a market. And I appreciate, have always appreciated Professor Golding's heart for the deaf, because a marginalized group is never a good thing to have in your country, right? But in general, there's a lot of people that we can reach. And so, you know, I want to encourage us to continue.
Thank you, Mr. Togora. So I want to just go around and ask a couple of questions. I'll ask you, Professor Golding, would you like to begin to tell us your perception just of the level of access for persons with disabilities in higher education in Jamaica? And then, are there any efforts being made that you know, your experience or anything else you can share with us in trying to address these issues?
The way access to higher education in Jamaica for deaf persons is limited. I remember having a conversation with the Jamaica Association for the Deaf, and I was wondering why there weren't more students in Heart, for instance. And while Heart does try and make accommodation, there are certain things that they expect. They expect deaf persons to know English. And they expect deaf persons to also know math. The deaf persons tend to do better on math than on English, because when you look at the structure of how, and Andy was just explaining this, to how deaf persons put together a sentence is completely different. When we started out trying to create content for the deaf population, we were so dumb, it is not funny. We started out, for instance, doing prepositions, and we expected that and this was done without us even thinking about it, we expected that deaf persons understood what some of these prepositions were. So all we did was to put the preposition and put the meaning, no context, no nothing. And therefore we weren't reaching the deaf person. So what we have done is to immerse ourselves into the deaf community in order to understand more so that we can develop far more effectively what we're doing for them. But if I go back to the question itself, I think one of the things that we must do for the deaf community is to say, well, okay, how do we teach competence? Can the person do the job? Can they communicate, not necessarily in English, in order to get the job done? I think we put some serious barriers up for deaf persons to be able to access higher education. The way it is structured is that, okay, there's a very, especially when you compare us internationally, our structure up to the high school level is not bad. It can be improved significantly. But when you compare us with other places in the world in which they don't even have schools for deaf people and all that kind of thing, and deaf persons are still left home and ostracized and put one side and figure that is a curse on the family and all that kind of a thing. We have moved beyond that. But we have not effectively moved beyond having access to deaf persons at the tertiary level. we stop, really stop at high school. And what we are doing here at UTech now is to try to break that. And we deliberately wanted to have deaf persons being matriculated into UTech so that other deaf persons could see that, listen, we can do it here in Jamaica, because most of the deaf persons who went on to higher education went overseas. They did not stay here because there was just nothing here, including heart. There was nothing here. So the project that we are working on now, if you want to call it a project, is to say to the deaf population, listen, we are opening up access here. With all the problems that we're having on all the TV planes and learning along the way, we are opening an avenue here for deaf person to see that, well, okay, we are Jamaicans, we ought to look after our own, we ought to look after ourselves. It should not be that students have to go away in order to access higher education. And then after that, what we also want to do is to make sure that after they access higher education or any other education, they can be absorbed into the working population, because that's another big deal, you know. If you cannot work, you are ostracized from society, you know. You are not included in what's going on. So the next step has to be that there is inclusion, not only in higher education, but that transition into the work world. So from, just to answer your, just to summarize succinctly the response to your question, there's not much access, and a huge part of that, that access has to do with the fact that there is a problem, not just in Jamaica, but in the world, for deaf persons to understand English. And what we're saying is that without English you can't move on. And what we're saying is that we need to relax that for the deaf population, but at the same time we want to ensure that somebody who is trained, deaf or otherwise, is competent in the area. And competence should be the hallmark, and not that, well, listen, you have to have 6 or whatever. Competence is it. If the person can do the job, fine.
Yes, thank you. You're free to give him a hand, you know, I thought that was really good. Okay, so I'll invite Mrs. Brackley to just answer, tell us your views on this question. What does it mean for the blind community to ensure equal access to different educational offerings and modalities?
Okay, well, it would mean that the blind and visually impaired community would be able to access education much easier, right? I mean, people want to access higher education, whether or not you're sighted or blind or visually impaired, this is for the same reason. You want to develop yourself, you want to contribute to the development of this country, you want to contribute to the income of your family, right? So when you change the modalities and make sure that it's accessible to us, then we are able to learn better, we do better, we are more independent, because you don't want to have to be depending on sighted persons all the time, and you have to wait on their time, you have to bother them, right? No, you have your own independence. So once the thing is accessible, electronic formats, then you do your own studies, you will be able to research on your own, you just do better and you learn well, and you'll be able to contribute to the society. Yes.
Very good, thank you. Well, Ms. Wallen, will you tell us what are some of the perceptions of students with disabilities concerning access and support here at UTech Jamaica? And again, what are some of the perceptions? What are some of the perceptions of students with disabilities concerning access here, access and support here at UTech Jamaica?
Well, basically in my personal experience,
I would say it was okay. I do well with English here at the university. I don't have a major difficulty with that. But my major difficulty would be communication. So accessibility for me would be interpreting, and I know it's expensive. And for other persons who don't have fluency in English, like he was mentioned before, it's more of a second language for deaf person. It's more of a barrier for them to even enter university. Thank you. Okay. So then, Mr. Sukoda. So I'd say in general, my experience, for me personally, is good. But for example, for other deaf persons, it could be very different. For example, Celine, who is also deaf and she's here, her experience could be very different in terms of accessibility. All right, thank you. Okay, Mr. Subola. What does it mean to ensure equal access for all different educational offerings and modalities from your point of view?
Sure. And you're not just speaking about online material, right? You're speaking about the university experience.
Yes.
Okay. Well, for deaf persons, I would say it is for all to have an understanding of the difference in the culture. It is not just simply to understand that a deaf person's ears don't work. It is to understand that a deaf person learns differently, communicates differently, thinks, honestly, thought process is different. So that would be the beginning. It would be understand that cultural aspect. And so, but if we understand that there is a different cultural aspect or a different cultural mode, then we should probably learn how to reach that person. So for me, when I first started working with deaf people, actually first I just started with an interest in sign language. That's when I learned that it was a completely different language. And then over time, I've learned that there's also a different way to reach that person, and in this case, teach that person. So I love math, all right? And so, nobody's with me on that? No, okay, good. I didn't think I was that strange. But explaining math to a deaf person is, honestly, it's a fun process, but it is nothing like what we do in class. So, for instance, what I have learned is that it is more efficient for me to go and review math. Thankfully, I have a science degree, so I understand math well. But it was better for me to go to the class, learn the material, and then work with the students that I'm interpreting for outside of class. Interpreting the math class straight on, from the teacher's mouth, from the lecturer's mouth, was ineffective. And so if we understand those things, and thankfully, for instance, this semester, we had a wonderful math lecturer who understood that this process, was different. And so she was accommodating, and she bent over backwards to help me help the students. And so it was wonderful. So understanding at a very high level, from the president down, everybody needs to understand that it is not just simply access to information that we need to facilitate. It is integration. So, I think that, yes, I think that summarizes it. Just don't depend too much on technology. I think, well, because we're talking about technology so much, we just can't, it is not the end all.
I want to mention something based on what Kamika mentioned. Just want to elaborate on it. What persons with disabilities are looking for is independent living. That's what they're looking for. So, as you're saying, Kamika, you don't want to be bothering people to go do something. You want to be able to do it yourself. That is what persons with disability are looking for. They want independent living. And the same thing again, because I'm so much more immersed in the deaf population. Amakele would want to go to the doctor and to be able to speak to the doctor without having somebody else being there. Because all of a sudden what happens is that your privacy becomes compromised because somebody else, and depending on what is happening to you, you just have to drag on somebody to come in order to do it. So that personal space that you have and that one-on-one that you would normally be having with somebody is no longer a one-on-one. And what persons with disability wants, the objectives that independent living, I can go around and do my own thing, and I don't have to, as you say, bother people and wait on their convenience and what have you to get things done. You want to be able to get up and do your thing. I just wanted to highlight that because it's a huge issue.
And I'll supplement that with just an example. When you are speaking with a deaf person, I am constantly needing to remind people who aren't used to it, professors, students alike, that your interaction, your relationship isn't with me. I've got a degree, I'm too old to learn anything, honestly. It's okay. Amakeda, Celine, they are the people you have the relationship with, so speak to them. I will facilitate your conversation with them. Why? Because just like it's being spoken here, it is about independence. It's about being complete, being whole.
No, just to add to that, as he said, speak directly to the blind person. Sometimes I don't know, maybe it's because the blind person doesn't really understand that you're speaking to them, but you can touch them to let them know that you're speaking to them. It's we have a handout at our JSB, Jamaica Society for the Blind, courtesy rules for the blind. You don't need to see the blind person and then speak to me and say, what's his name? You can touch him and say, what's your name? You know what I mean? So it's something that it really annoys that blind person, because they're human beings, they're adults, and they can speak for themselves. They don't need anybody to speak for them, right?
Yeah, so many times somebody will look at me and say, and Amakeda sit right next to me and say, well, please tell her. Right here.
Yeah.
Right here. But that's very, very hard to get used to, I understand, but that's the learning process.
Thank you very much. Right now, I just want to open to the audience. There's a microphone in the middle of the room. Please stand and ask your questions to the panel. Yes, and say who you are.
Hello. Just to compliment the Office of Distance Learning for this symposium initiative. I would have thought the emphasis would have been on distance learning, but this component I think is really fantastic, and I have been privileged to in this semester lecture Amakeda, who is a very good student. But even while I say that, I've been kind of conflicted in terms of how I treat her, because I would want to make sure that what I'm doing in class, she relates to, understands, identifies with. But at the same time, I don't want to pay too much attention to her so that either she feels very self-conscious or the other students say, why is he paying much attention to the student? I've been very fortunate because I have been exposed to both the deaf community and the blind community in other spheres. And aware, as has been said today, that it's a totally different world. And in that respect, a part of the comment I'm making, it has been said, but certainly in terms of the lecturer being aware of how to communicate, I just feel that another very important component of this is the students that they have to relate to. How the other students see them, because I'm concerned in terms of even group work, which is a major part of the activity. How they actually, because the interpreter is there in the classroom, I always wonder what happens outside of class when they have to meet. Is the interpreter always going to be available for that kind of thing? Are the students going to be sympathetic to the lack of communication and involve them? So those kinds of things, I think, I don't know how the university deals with that or proposes to deal with that, but if you're going to be expanding that, to me that's another area of concern. I'd love to hear, even from Amaka, because I don't get the chance to really speak with her much, how she copes with that communication with other students, because that's an important part of the learning process at the university.
Okay, you didn't say your name.
Lennox.
Okay, thank you.
That's a good question, because normally when it comes to group work, students, they don't have a problem with having me a part of the group. But like, for example, in one of my recent classes, the teacher had one girl participate in the group who was very upset that I was in the group. And it was the first time I had experienced that within the group. So, and Andy, it also made him very upset as well. So, in that particular experience, she refused to even communicate with me. And so I was actually moved to another group, which was considered more mature students who were more accepted of me. And I communicated, of course, differently with them. And of course, they were willing to accept that difference in communication. So, but also in communicating with my group outside the classroom, we use WhatsApp to communicate with, and hopefully that experience, negative experience I will never have it again. I hope so. But all in all, the group work has been inclusive.
Great. That's done.
Good morning, everyone. Alright, so I don't have a question, I have a comment, because it's pretty much going based on what was said by, I'm Garfield Graham, I work in the College of Business and Management. So I've been fortunate to have discussions with Amakeda on more than one occasion in advisement, and she comes to my office often. I remember the first time we met. I think it was the first time we met. And the interaction was quite interesting because she saw, I don't know how many persons know Dr. Claudette Williams-Myers, the Associate Dean of the college. She's also my boss. And I remember the first thing that Amakeda said when she saw her was that she's pretty, well, she didn't say she's pretty, but that was the interaction, as in what she signed. And I think... Speak in the microphone. You're not hearing me? Better now? Alright, so you were hearing anything that I said before? Yeah. Okay, great. And that's Andy, right? Right, and I think Andy was there and Andy signed it, and it was like, it was kind of just an eye-opening experience, because you'll hear that someone is deaf, and then you kind of think of a different kind of, but her first impression was like to comment on just how Dr. Myers looked, and it was kind of just refreshing. And then from there, the interaction was always just kind of, it was never just, because I don't sign, I cannot, but we communicate a lot. She comes to my office and she'll drop off forms and she'll come to get information. And we happen to work through it, at first I'm like, and then we gesture, we go back and forth, and eventually what is required to be communicated is actually communicated. And I've met with her and Andy as well. And it's also a wonderful experience because he does try to, step out of the way and allow you to speak to Amakeda. So, just to say that while we ask what it is that we're doing as a university to kind of allow for that, and then as it relates to her interaction with groups and person, speaking from the point of view of persons who she would have interacted with from the administrative side of things. You know, it's possible. It's not something that is, you might think it's daunting in general, but after, and I can only speak for her because I know her and I've interacted with her, so I'm not speaking for everybody. But it's not as daunting as you might think. It's actually pretty easy. You know, so I really just wanted to put that out there and just let you know that, you know, it's not very intimidating after you actually get to know her, get to know the person for the first time.
Thank you.
If I can speak to this, heaven forbid we leave without some conclusions or action items or big pictures or goals. I'm a goal kind of guy. I think we can see, and people are starting to see, that communicating or facilitating communication, understanding, facilitating understanding with the deaf, it's not impossible. We have the means in Jamaica to do this. We don't have a lot of means. We don't have a lot of interpreters that can handle college algebra. I can't wait for calculus. But we have the means. And so what we don't have, I think, is the awareness. So now, if you've noticed that right now there are 2 students in university right now in Jamaica. Is there still one? There's one more at UE. So there's so we have one more at UE also. There's 10,000 deaf people in Jamaica. So while this is just a start. So I just want to encourage us that we have the means to make this happen. It's not easy. I will give us all that. It is not easy. It requires expertise. It requires good interpreters. But I've seen at UTech, and I want to give kudos to UTech for sure at how inviting they have been. And it has not just been Professor Golden. He did spearhead a lot of this, and I'm so grateful for him. But it has been well accepted, and it's the attitude. Just what was spoken just now about, hey, listen, I was worried about it, but you know, in the end, it really wasn't that difficult. Our biggest barriers are simply attitudes and education. So, I don't know. Is there a different way of saying that? We can do this. In other words, we can do this. We can have more than 2 deaf individuals attending the University of Technology. We can, I mean, for me, my goal, since I'm on stage and I have the microphone, my goal would be that this permeates the culture. So what starts at the university, and Professor Golding and I have discussed this ad nauseum, is that what starts here should quickly permeate into the secondary level of education, the primary level of education. That's the goal, because if we're just trying to catch deaf persons at the university level, we're never going to get beyond 2. So that's my goal.
All right, I just wanted to let you know that I see your hand, sir. I want to let you know that we are really talking about inclusivity in everything, but we want you to remember the online. So when we plan and design our courses, all of what we're saying here is going to come online also. So we accept that. Yes, it's not just about when you go in the classroom and you see the students face to face, but the same sort of mentality that we're developing now, we want to take that online. There are 2 gentlemen standing and another who raised his hand. I'm going to ask those 3 persons to give me your questions. After that, I will go back to the panel for their wrap-up statement. Yes, sir.
Henry Gray from Par Trust. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just to this is partially question and information. So information first. At heart, we have 4 instructional models. One dealing with the deaf, another dealing with visual impairment, physical impairment, and intellectual impairment. Okay? These models are used to do 3 main things. Support learners and administrators who are facilitating entry to our programs, going through our programs, and the last part is transitioning to the world of work. Since 2014, when the Disability Act was passed, we have been doing a few things in supporting that act. One of which is we have trained a few persons. The last cohort had to do with massage therapy. Those are blind persons. And recently, one came on radio explaining how the training was very good, and she's now owning her own business. The truth is, resources are gradually being made available to support all 4 models. So we are supporting national development through various initiatives, including the infusion of ICT in the process. So accessible PDF, accessible resources is part of what we have to be doing as we speak. Our booth outside is showing those 4 models, and the brain machine is not there, but we have been supporting Abilities Foundation in a big way in terms of making resources available, so giving support to the ICT activities. So a few things are happening and more is on the horizon.
Good. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kojo Oshio-Niami. I'm from Caribbean Graduate School of Theology. My name is Kojo, K-O-J-O. I'm from the Caribbean Graduate School of Theology. I am in charge of their online learning platform. But I've had some interaction with persons with different abilities before. I assisted someone who is blind, Dr. Hickswell Douglas. He actually finished his degree from the University of the West Indies. I wanted to tell Makeda, I'm wondering if, because I realize she's very intelligent, just from the interaction. So I'm wondering, what are the possibilities of her and others who are going through this program to actually write even a book about the experience, so that this can then sensitize the entire society, so that Jamaica would be more inclusive in our thinking.
Wow, thank you. Would you like to respond, Makeda? Okay, she'll think about it. All right, so we have. Yes.
The process that we're going through here at UTech is something that we are documenting as we go on. This whole idea, the suggestion that was made is a good one, and it's something that we have considered in the whole process of what we're doing, because for us to learn from this process, it is important that we document it. So it is all part of the scholarship and the pedagogy of what we're doing. So we're not doing this just standing alone. We're looking at it in a broader picture in which we're saying, well, we want to document it and for it to be of assistance, not just to UTech, but to anybody else, not just in Jamaica, but anywhere else in the world. So we plan on writing on this and publishing on it, the experiences that we have had. And although Makeda doesn't know yet, but she will be involved.
All right, so there's a blind gentleman who indicated before, and afterwards, the gentleman in the glasses. You can say who you are right here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Right, so I am Sean Harvey, Guidance Counselor, Salvation and School for the Blind. Yes, part-time lecturer at the Dublin Caribbean University as well. Now, I realized from the discussion there, well, the knowledge base about the screen reading software for the blind person, such as JAWS. Now, notwithstanding the fact that there's a there are these screen readers as it relates specifically to distance education. I find that some of these interactive boards and some of the medium, the online medium that we use for distance education, sometimes they are generally not reader friendly. So I sincerely hope that we ensure that, because not all of our students, not all Black persons will be able to do face-to-face interaction, as the economic demand has resulted in persons having to work and study as well in that community. So I sincerely hope, we know of the progress of UTech in developing software and support. I implore persons to ensure, to even allow some blind students to do some session of some of those online tools that are used in the interactive learning, because I am aware that some of us, even while I was a student at UTech as well, that pose some challenge to actually complete some of those online assignments independently, so to speak. So while they will be completed, it would be with the assistance of somebody. So I want the employer again to strongly take such, to ensure that they are screen reader friendly and allow persons who will potentially be using them to do like tests of those things prior to their implementation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Sure.
Yes, just to add to what Sean said, he's right. I mostly spoke to your website being screen reader friendly. But including now the platform, as he said, with interaction, because if you're having a class online with persons in varying places, and it's an online classroom, that interactive platform, yes, some of them can be very inaccessible. The course I am doing, or almost finished, they use the Blackboard Collaborate, and I must say, very, very screen reader friendly for the most part, right? Especially from my phone. With screen reader on my phone, which is an iPhone, the voiceover works very well with that. Online, they recommend the Chrome, to use the Chrome browser with it. And it works fine, but I find that it works better on my phone. But BBC, the Blackboard Collaborate, is fine. But as Sean said, please allow when you eventually get blind persons in, I don't know if you've had blind persons at UTech before. I've spoken with my executive director, he doesn't seem to remember, I think he only was one, and they said they had difficulty going through the courses here. But when you do that, allow the person to be able to test, because for me, I wasn't able to test the waters before actually having the class. I just had to be there. When I joined the class, that's when I had to be fishing through and see if it works. And so I'm so glad it did. But yeah, that's very important.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Adrian Savage. PhD student here in Faculty of Education and Liberal Studies. I was born physically disabled, but I got disabled along life's way. And I've spent a significant time here at UTech. And I just want to share with you my experience, some of my experience. But before I do that, I want to really say how pleased I am to be here today to hear what's going on. Because coming here many years ago, I tend to be in the shadows because you don't get the feel that you are, most of what you do it based on your own determination and what you really want from life. You find that it's, for one of a better word, not really a very friendly environment for the disabled community, right? I've had many challenges, but I've overcome, and I continue to do that. What is important, I heard one word said this morning, and that is to understand the culture. There's a cultural change for persons who are disabled. We have great fears. The fear of rejection, the fear of failing, the fear of being mocked. And that it can either push you away or it can increase your resolve to succeed. Some of us, unfortunately, get pushed away while others will fight and make headway. I chose to fight because I'm determined to succeed. I think about the others who may not be that strong and they take another route. I just want to say that what is important is that the initiative that we take here, that we sensitize the entire university population as to the needs and how people who have disability, how we think, how fragile we are. Because the fear of failure is a real fear. Real fear. And it can either shut you up, close you out, or it can push you towards success. When I travel overseas, I don't get the type of negative feeling. When you go overseas, you are embraced for your disability. Everybody wants to help. Here in Jamaica, it's not like that. Very difficult and cold environment. You go on the bus, the seats are reserved. You can hardly get a chance to sit there. And nobody says anything. We just have this sort of cold way about us. I've been here. So, you know, it's just a complaining session. I don't want to complain. But classes are scheduled on the 3rd floor. You have a physical disability. You're here in the nights. The corridors, sometimes you don't see the light switch. There's no switch. I'm just saying, I'm encouraged that I'm here today. This is the beginning, and I'd like to see it extend, expand. Very soon I'll be out of here, so I will be in the shadow. Then I'm looking forward to get out, because it has been a learning experience. It has really been a learning experience. I've had good experience as well. Because there have been persons who have been very encouraging, and they would help you along the way. But there are others who just... My friend there mentioned something about group work. Sometimes they stay away from you. They don't embrace it because you are like an added trouble. You're added trouble to the group. And so you know, it's not just the access. Access, yes, technology will help, and other things will help, but it's a culture, it's the understanding of who we are as individuals and what our needs are, and can we be brothers and sisters to each other. It's just our basic humanity that is important. That's all we ask for. We want to be as independent as we can be. But sometimes the odds are really against us. I was encouraged to come. I didn't want to come and talk. But I say that if there's anything that I can share that would make the process a little more attainable, then that's what pushed me to come here and to say what I say. I hope you don't take it negatively, but I'm just telling you from my perspective. I've been here for years doing my program. This is what I experienced, and I will incorporate it in what you do to make UTech the institution of choice. UTech, where persons want to come and experience and remember the good things that this university has to offer. It has a potential. I entered the program, the PhD program here in its infancy, and I've learned quite a lot, and I'm looking forward to complete that program. Congratulations and thank you.
Alright, I'm going to go to ask the panelists to give me just any further suggestions, your vision as your closing remarks, but I'm just going to open for one more person, maybe a female. I haven't heard a lot from the females inside here. Do you have a comment or a question? I'm not being biased or anything, but you know. Alright, so nobody else? One person?
Hi, good morning. I think it still is. My name is Lisa Shaw and I'm a lecturer here at the School of Computing. My comment is really to commend Andy, because I have seen the student in my programming class, and I think Andy's background was in computer science as well, so he could understand and relate to some of the programming concepts and was then able to, you know, interpret and so on for Celine. And I'm not sure how well we understand the importance or the need for the interpreters themselves to understand the content. As he had mentioned earlier, it's not just about coming into the class and at that moment being able to then interpret, because for technical courses and, you know, depending on the content, depending on what area it is you're in, the interpreters themselves will need to be able to understand and relate to those areas. So even going forward, as we were speaking about the need for interpreters, then there's going to be the need for persons in different areas, not just maybe one person. I mean, Andy has been great. I see him going to all different kinds of classes, psychology, programming, he talked about math, and I don't know whether or not we will have you know, the level of interpreters who can then be able to interpret all those different areas, you know, just having one person to do all of that. So that's going to be an important step moving forward to ensure that the interpreters themselves understand the content and will then be able to, you know, sign for the deaf persons, you know, very effectively. So I just want to commend him and to suggest that as a way moving forward, that we need to also think about the interpreters themselves and how they'll be able to understand and translate that content.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you.
Lisa, I appreciate that very much. But you are right on about that. And so I'm not only interpreting here, but I also facilitate other interpreters, you know, because we have scheduling conflicts. And so I am always choosing which interpreter is right for the class. But you're absolutely right. The interpreter must understand the material. And that, and you are a great example also for an accommodating lecturer. You sent me the material. I asked for the material up front because while I may have a science background, it's way in the background. So so I had some review to do and never learned C++. Okay, I was doing QBasic. So, anyways, so thank you for being accommodating, and you can encourage the other lecturers to be the same, and just to realize that we're not just there regurgitating the material, we are there to facilitate understanding, and that requires understanding on our part. So thank you for that.
Yes. You may go ahead and make your comments. Just tell me any further suggestions for enhancing what's happening, any vision you have.
Yeah. I'll stay seated, maybe it'll make me short. In general, if I want to impress anything, it is collaboration. It absolutely has to start within UTech. You're doing it yourself by engaging with me as the ODL group, right? I cannot expect everybody to understand what it means to be an interpreter, to facilitate the university learning for deaf people. That's my job. Your job is to simply be receptive, and you are doing that. And so please, I want to encourage us, this is in all of us, and it doesn't just apply to deafness, we need to collaborate. We need to not have, from my business experience, companies and organizations can have fiefdoms, right? This is my group. I will do it my way. I don't need to talk with Professor Golding, even though he has all the experience in this area, right? That's not a good way to live. It's not a good way to live life. It's not a good way to work. And it's definitely not the way we're going to advance. So collaborate. There's no such thing as too much communication. So please continue to do that. I myself am available. There are other people who are smarter than me who also are available to collaborate with. And then my only other thing to add would be that to please realize that this is just the beginning. You know, we have a long ways to go. Now, I never want to I never want to forget what is good for what is, only focusing on what is best. No, we're doing wonderful things now. But, let's keep it going and realize that there is a big world out there, a big deaf world, in my case. Our goal should be to create leaders. Our goal should be to create educators. I would like to interface with Fells, for instance, to start talking about the broader picture of education, because we're never going to have university students if our secondary and primary levels are weak as well. So, please, let's, maybe UTech can become the all things deaf center for the Caribbean. It is sorely lacking, and it very well could do that. So, thank you.
Thank you too. Closing statements from Amatera.
Well, I just wanted to say that we can also look at student social life. I mean, my classroom environment is great, but I don't have a social life here on campus because of the lack of communication. The only person I can communicate with here is Andy. So if, and people, all they can do is say hi and you okay, and that's it. So my experience in being here is I'm not able to develop friendships because of lack of communication. And sign language, if it was part of an elective here, if it was an elective here at the university, people would be willing, other students will be willing to learn sign language and take those courses so that it would help me to improve my social environment here at the campus. My interpreter is not going to be with me 24/7. My interpreter is there to facilitate me in the classroom, but outside the classroom, what else is there available to me? So there are students who want to learn sign language, and it's not difficult to learn, but that will certainly help improve my social life outside of the classroom.
So, just wanted to start off by saying that I think the blind and visually impaired population of Jamaica is somewhere around 3% of the population, which is about 80-something thousand persons living with blindness and visual impairment in this country. And it is so important that the Jamaica Society for the Blind was asked to be a part of this discussion, because many of those persons would want to come and get higher education and want to choose UTech as their institution of choice. So it's good that you are thinking of making your online environment inclusive, as well as in general the environment on campus inclusive, right? So earlier I spoke mostly to the online environment, but also to say that Amakeda is here, she's deaf, and I speak on behalf of the blind. There are persons who are physically disabled. If you have a department or an office dedicated to working with persons with disabilities. And this office would directly, it would ensure that the persons with disabilities on your campus, your students with disabilities, have constant dialogue with decision makers of UTech. Then their voices will be heard when there are problems, and Amaka just spoke of her social life and issues. These are issues that would have been heard before through this office dedicated to persons with disabilities. That's important, right? And you probably have volunteers there for the blind, because yes, we have our technology to help, but sometimes we need volunteers to help with typing, reading books that may not be in accessible formats, so you'd have the volunteers there. The environment, not for only, we spoke about mostly instructional material, but if you want to send notices to the students, remember that the blind is not going to be able to see a notice on the blackboard, on a board outside, right? So email it to them, for them to get the notice as well. We know that Braille, asking you to put Braille there is probably a stretch, and not all blind persons read Braille, not all. So electronically, email it to them, they will get the notice as well, right? So things like that, just to make the entire environment inclusive. Also, electronic library. I've heard of this, that there are places with electronic library. If you have that, the blind person will be able to access that much easier than other libraries, right? And also, my director asked me to say that if UTech could help us to lobby the government to help us to get them to sign the Marrakesh Treaty, which basically speaks to being able to exchange books accessible books between countries. So right now, if a book exists in another country that's already accessible, they can't just send it to us. We have to get the book in the original format and then create the accessible format again, which is a waste. So Jamaica Society for the Blind stands ready to help UTech. You can call us, ask us for suggestions on any issues you're having with any blind person. If you need help with getting them settled on your campus, we stand ready to collaborate with UTech. Right? Thank you.
Thank you. First, I want to congratulate Dr. Janet Barkley-Brown and her team for putting on this event. I really think that you can't say it yourself because you're part of the team. So I think we should first congratulate just a couple of clarification before I wrap up. We do have, for instance, an office on campus that deals with persons with disabilities. We take into consideration, and I heard one of our PhD students mention about classes being on the 3rd floor, which is something that office takes into consideration, and we do our best in terms of trying to have persons in those classes, those classes are on the ground floor. As it relates to Amaka and also to Celine, what we're looking at generally is the holistic development of the student. So we're not just looking at to say, well, okay, we want you to get an education in class. Because a lot of education takes place outside of class. A lot of learning, an awful lot of learning takes place outside of the classroom setting. And far more time is spent outside of the classroom than inside the classroom. So we have and are taking into consideration, for instance, exactly what Amaka has said, because we have had discussions around these things, because we are looking at the total development, not just to say, well, okay, we brought you in and you have gotten a degree, which is really what we want, but we are interested in the process and we are following the process right through. And listen, we're going to make mistakes, but because we are starting something new, we really don't care. We want to make a mistake and learn from it and move on. And not just to learn from it and move on, but to leave little more than crumbs there so that other persons who come along will not make those same mistakes. But that's the way we are taking this on. We're taking it on in which, listen, we embrace making mistakes. Because we're going to try something, if it don't work, we're going to try something else until it works. And that's the way you chat and you path. You have to cut through the bushes and what have you in order to leave a path so that other persons can come. The University of Technology is committed to being inclusive. I somehow think now that we have reached the point in which when we are looking at inclusivity for persons with disability, we should not start at the primary and secondary level in which they are segregated and then figure that, well, boy, listen, when they come to university, it is going to change very quickly because it's a process. Because if, for instance, deaf persons have only been interacting with deaf people up to primary school, it then becomes a huge cultural adjustment to come into university and adjust very quickly. Let me put it this way, persons who are coming from high school without any disability find it shocking to come into university and realize that nobody is petting and powdering them. They are on their own, they are now adults, all of a sudden they become adults. Within a couple of months between when they graduate in June or July and August, they become adults. Now with somebody with a disability, it becomes even more harder for them to adjust. Coming out of high school, they are even more protected. And then coming into university in this new environment in which you're not only independent and expected to be independent, but nobody is going around and telling you that you have a class at a particular time. You have to know that and go and do it yourself. So we may have to start thinking about that. We want to lobby, as you say, for the disabled. We don't just want to provide access. We want to lobby so that things change. Part of a university's mandate is to help to change things. A huge problem, though, that we're having now is with interpreting. And it has been, as I said before, a concern. We do not want this cannot be the mode of operation, especially with our intention to expand. It must be that we have more persons being able, with a skill set to interpret. That is a requirement for deaf persons. And without that, we're really not providing access. Access is not just saying when you can come, but when you come, there's nothing to facilitate you. We must be able to facilitate with them. I don't know if there's anybody here from the Ministry of Education in which we have been trying and all kinds of things to get through to them, and we really want to get through to them. We really need the assistance in terms of having the resources to provide interpreting services. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Wow. I want you to put your hands together, please, for the panel. That is really quite a week, you know? A bigger clap, please. Thank you. And I'm just really overjoyed. Professor Paul Golding, Mr. Soba-Bola, Mrs. Brathwaite, and Ms. Wallen. Really appreciate you coming to speak with us. There's a call for interpreters. There's a call for more understanding of this audience, this population, this target group. There is the need for more assistive technologies to be used, and in our online we will go ahead, we will configure, we'll adjust, or we'll just redesign as much as possible. Of course, there is some amount of accessibility online, but we're going to focus on it so that we do the best we can for our students. And we really want to continue to be the leaders in the whole idea of accessibility as Office of Distance Learning. I'm also inviting Dr. Bradley to come to the front. Maybe she wants to say thanks to a few people. I have to mention a student who came, who I met in Mandeville, Miss Claudine Thomas. She is deaf. I used to teach her all the way back in 1992-93 at Caribbean Christian Center for the Deaf, and we communicated and she said she'd come. I also want to say thanks for all those who came, though, not just Claudine, but all of you. I'll just give these tokens while Dr. Brian will come, and I'm sure she wants to say thanks to you all for coming.
Thanks a million times. Right, while Mrs. Williams. All right, just wanted to especially make special mention of some persons and always at the risk of exclusion. But first, to thank you all for being here and for, as we say, a core group being in place for the better part of 2.5 hours. And after this, I'm inviting you on your way out. There is refreshment in the exhibition room. So please go by the exhibitions next door. And if you can, take a picture with our cheetah, which is right at the door. And you will go ask more about the cheetah. There is an exhibition focusing on the cheetah. But also Heart NTA, we want to thank them. They have a demonstration of some things they're doing with the assistive technologies. Let me mention KB Robotics, that's Kinroy Bailey Robotics, and he's an alumni. We have JTech, they have a booth. We have our UTech Office of Technology and Data Applications Development, SAPNO. We have Dr. Charles Lawrence, who I mentioned for Cheetah. So they are next door, small, but work that is going on. Let me thank, as I did before, our keynote speaker and others this morning, Mrs. Isabella Vieira, Professor Colin Jazz, Mrs. Maxine Henry Wilson, who led in the first part. And I know Mrs. Williams just handed some tokens, but I want to add my personal thanks to Professor Paul Golding, who continues to be a leader and innovator. Research, teaching, every aspect, and he's the Dean of the College of Business and Management. Mr. Andy Spoda, we just met, but he has gotten us all excited, all right, because we, as Mrs. Williams mentioned, would have had universal design principles in any case that we have to adhere to, but now it is coming alive because we are, very conscious of the needs and the individuals that we have to start working with. Ms. Makeda Wallen, as our student, thank you for being willing to share. Thank you for taking that risk, and we want to continue supporting and working as best as we can. And Mrs. Kamika Brathwaite, we have a lot of work to do. So thank you for being here and for just helping us this morning to kick off. As I said, this is inaugural, and it means that we'll continue the series, all right, throughout the year. Want to mention our own UTech Facilities Management Department. Seamless, behind the scenes, but always makes a difference. If the doors couldn't open this morning, if the lights weren't turned on, there would be problems. The print trade, the marketing department, student workers, in particular we have Ms. Kimberly White and Mr. Houdin, Michelle, who you've seen moving around. They are actually assigned to the Office of Distance Learning. And that's part of the UTech philosophy also, to have our Earn and Study students actively involved. We have Lillian's Restaurant. Please partake as soon as you leave the room here. We have a scheduling unit, it's Rosie Lindins and Ms. Chelsea McLeish. And we couldn't have done this also without our Learning Technology Support Unit, which is from the Technology Information Management Department. A lot here today, face-to-face, yes, simple technology, low-key, but we're saying that you make the difference, always a human factor, and help us. We'll continue to work to expand with the online technologies, to expand with other forms of technologies, and so even as we declare this aspect closed, we want to continue the dialogue, so please feel free to speak to any member of the UTech Office of Distance Learning. Let me just have them wave their hands. They're there in the audience. Mr.
Andre Lawrence, who is our eLearn technologist. We have Mr. Leon Grant, who is our educational technology specialist. All right, ask Ms. Shenny Wilson, wave her hand. She straddles both, Learning Technology Support Unit, but she's with ODL. You'd have met this morning Mrs. Florette Williams, who is the instructional design specialist. And did Ms. Michaela Peck come back in the room? Okay, here she is. She's our distance learning and training officer. And so we try as a small team to disrupt UTech. We make no apologies for it. And we're moving from being a tangential aspect of our office into mainstream so that life will never be the same again at UTech. We want to make that positive difference. And so we thank you all, look forward to speaking with you. Hope I haven't left out anybody, but thank you, thank you, thank you. And invite you now to just step next door. One second. Yes, Mr.
A big hand for the interpreter, please.
The interpreter, yes. Yes. Seamless, I nearly forget her. Say who it is? Mr. Francis, Mr. Colin Francis, okay, sitting right here as our photographer also for the day. So thank you everybody, this is just the beginning. Ensure you have signed our register. What we want to also do with technology, we have videotaped it, and we think that beyond being in a room, we want to put up, have dialogue. Please go to like our ODL blog site so that the discussion can continue. There's a lot of work to do. So thanks again.